2025 may just end up going down as a historic year for Nihon Falcom's Trails franchise, at least in the West. Trails Through Daybreak 2 already came out a few months ago, but we're still expecting 2 more mainline games before the end of the year. One is Trails Beyond the Horizon, a release that would not only catch us up to the Japanese releases, but also set us up for a possible simultaneous release for the next Trails game. That would be a first in Falcom history. Even the most recent Ys game, a series with much less dialogue than Trails on average, came out a full year after it released in Japan. The other game we're expecting this year is Trails in the Sky First Chapter, a full 3D remake of the very first Trails game, which introduced fans everywhere to the fantastic world of Zemuria. We've only seen a little bit of footage so far, but the game is utterly beautiful, possibly the best that Falcom games have looked in a very long time. In addition, this game could become a new starting point for potential fans who couldn't get into the older games, making it a big opportunity for the franchise to gain wider recognition. For that reason, I, among many others, am very much looking forward to this remake's release, though I can't deny that I have a few reservations about the whole thing. I've been a fan of this series and Falcom games in general for a few years now, and I've always found myself pondering why Trails as a franchise has always had a tough time establishing a foothold in the West. There are many reasons, even if you ignore the fact that JRPGs in general are still quite niche even now, but the most solvable reason is just the lack of availability of those first few games. Trails in the Sky First and Second Chapter are pretty much only available on the PSP in the West, and the third never made it to Western consoles. Now, of course, you can play all 3 games on Steam, and they're even available on GOG, but surprisingly, there are a lot of people who still do not game on PC, which means those games are essentially unavailable to them. The Trails in the Sky remake's biggest benefit is that it immediately makes the entire franchise's starting point that much more accessible. It's a big deal, especially since a lot of Trails fans really want new players to start at the very beginning. Story is a big deal when it comes to this franchise, and as a result, fans are pretty strict about where people should start, something that certainly hasn't helped the series' popularity. Having said that, I also would like as many people as possible to start at Trails in the Sky, so I do see this aspect of the remake as being a big deal. There's also the fact that the remake will be taking full advantage of the growth that Nihon Falcom has experienced over the last 20 years. You can already see some modern gameplay additions in the promotional footage they've put out, and of course, the 3D models are light years ahead of the retro-style chibi models they used in the original. It's clearly geared towards grabbing that casual crowd, and this time it might actually work. Even so, I'm finding it a little hard to be all that thrilled. I do hope that the remake is successful, but let's be honest, even if it is, these new fans won't necessarily be excited to go back to those older games. I have no doubt that Falcom will go back and remake all the classic style Trails games, and for every one fan that decides they can't wait and goes back to the originals, there will likely be 4 or more that decide waiting is more than worth it. That might not be a big deal to most Trails fans since the game's story seems largely untouched, but for me it's a bit of a disappointment. To me, the aesthetics of those early classic Trails games were easily one of the best things about them. The pseudo 2D look Falcom developed during this period was incredibly iconic, and they did a great job of invoking the feel of more classic RPGs. They showed a complete mastery over the models, which allowed them to express and animate in a way that was simple yet charming. It gave the series its own character and really made it stand out from its peers and competitors. Here's a hot take. I've always wished the Trails games could have stayed at this level of graphical fidelity. The jump to full 3D models between Azure and Cold Steel may have been a necessary move for the company, but to me it just felt clumsy. They clearly hadn't mastered these new models yet, and it shows. Nowadays, they're a lot better, and you can even argue they've gotten better than their contemporaries. Yet at the same time, I feel like Trails is slowly becoming harder and harder to pick out amongst the more generic anime games, especially when they're so close to dipping into that well in the first place. Now, at the end of the day, I'm still happy that the remake is coming out, as is pretty much anyone else who's a fan of this series. Even so, the idea of a generation of Trails fans never getting to experience the aesthetics and the charm of those early games honestly saddens me. At this point though, this is honestly going to be something I'm just going to have to accept. After all, I can't say that I'm any better. While I do try to play originals over remakes when I can't deny that when I got into the Yakuza / Like a Dragon series, I happily skipped over playing the first 2 Yakuza games in favor of playing the Kiwami remakes. How can I tell players to stick to the originals when I'm not always willing to do so myself? At the very least, if you are someone who is thinking about getting into Trails and is eyeing that remake, do me one favor. Take a look at the original game, and if you think it's something that might be up your alley, please give it a try, especially if you have easy access to a computer that can run games. I'm not going to push it on you, but I swear that if it weren't for those games' aesthetic, vibe, and art style, I don't know that I would ever have gotten as deep into the series as I have without them. I find them incredible even today, and while they'll always be available to those that want to play them, I worry that that group seems to get smaller with each passing day. Thanks for watching. I'd like to clarify that whatever I have to say about the remake, I still want to see it do well and see the Trails franchise grow because of it. Are any of you interested in using the remake as a starting point, or have you already been snapped up by the franchise's iron jaws? Either way, please let me know what you think of the remake in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to see more of my videos, and I'll see you next time.